Let's do this.
Sounds
Welcome
good.
to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's a real
Yeah, I
pleasure.
mean, this is really thrilling for me. It'd be nice for us to have a proper catch up and a bit of a chinwag about, your experience over the last year or so on your path to sobriety and all the good things that have flowed from that. And just to give people some context to who you are, that you hold a PhD in literature. You
I
are
do,
a rock
yep.
star in many ways, a self-proclaimed party animal that is
Definitely
now
that, yeah.
exactly. We explore that. We'll get into that in a second
Yep.
through this brilliant book. And you've been called to write this book. And I say called because I think there's that hero's journey that I like to talk about and, decode as we go through these podcasts, really, of that momentum in your life that's taken you from somewhere and your darkest and your most difficult times to this place now where you're in a position that you've created this beautiful piece of art. I'm going to call it a piece of art. It is a beautiful book to
Thanks, mate.
help other people. I think that's really powerful, that journey. And that's the journey that I sort of want to explore with you today. So I thought we'd start at the beginning. Maybe give us a
Yep.
bit of context to your background, the environment that you grew up in, and that first drink that you had when you were around 13.
Sure. So I grew up in Ivanhoe, which is a little suburb in Melbourne, sort of leafy, riverside suburb, really nice area. Yeah, really lovely family, very supportive, great relationships with all of them. But yeah, we just grew up in early 90s and late 80s in Australia, and it was a heavy boozing culture.
Yep.
And from as young as I can remember, alcohol was just omnipresent. It was always around, even from 4, 5, 6 years old. It was just something that I saw and wanted to do, and knew
Yeah.
that when I hit a certain age, I would be allowed to do it.
Be a
My
man.
parents yeah, be a man, exactly right. Learn how to drink beer, even though it tasted
Yeah.
absolutely disgusting, and all those kinds of things. So, the drinking age in Australia is 18, so we had to try and figure out ways to get booze. So, usually involves stealing booze off our parents or bribing people to buy us alcohol out the front of the liquor
I
store when
think
we were
we all
teenagers.
sort of start there, don't we? I looked, in
Yeah,
reading your story, it was like my story, especially in the early days on the page, that sort of 12, 13, just borrowing. I'm going to call it borrowing, but you never replaced it from your parents' stash of alcohol or asking innocent bystanders, would they go into the offer license and buy you drink? I remember actually when I was, I think 13, I was the sort of oldest looking of my friends. I'd big braces on, right? Like proper train track braces. I would go into the offer license and like fumble over my words, and I wouldn't order just a normal drink. I'd order 6 cans of super tenants, which is like 9%. Like no one drinks
yeah.
that stuff, especially not clearly teenage kids. Yet we were happily served that stuff all day long. I mean, it's amazing when you look back. I mean, I think the world's changed since then a little bit, but it was
I
certainly
think so.
very
I think
accessible.
so. I think so too. And like, shortly after we did all that stuff, I think there were like fines brought in so that if you
Yeah.
got caught, procuring alcohol for teenagers, you actually copped a massive fine. So it was just a bit, slightly different era, I guess. But yeah, there was certainly never any problems getting alcohol. Like it was really easy. And, you sort of, as a parent now, sort of think, oh my God, it was so easy for us to get alcohol, from 12 and 13 years old. So, that kind of love affair with socializing through alcohol really began for me at 12 and 13, and sort of continued pretty much unchanged, unchecked until I decided to give up alcohol, nearly 3 years ago now. So,
And I think that's so true. And I say this a lot. We start drinking in our teens, and very often people never stop, or they don't ever have a break until there's some reason to, much later in their life, in their 30s, 40s, 50s, or again, it never happens. And I think that's what's really important about your story, is having that courage to be that circuit breaker. I think I remember you mentioned that in the book, but there's something I just want to actually hone in on, because right at the very end of the book, you said something that I just want to replay now and just sort of to broaden that conversation around that. You said you were owning basically the fact that this is a solo mission and you had to take responsibility for all of your actions. And you said there was no childhood trauma, no horrible experiences, nothing to blame on anyone else, just the reflection of a pudgy kid doing stupid stuff for no rhyme, no reason. And what I loved
yeah,
about that, firstly, is that you're taking ownership. But secondly, I do want to sort of challenge that in some ways, because I would argue, and having read your story, that you were very similar to me in that regard, that you had that sort of social anxiety about
Mm.
being around lots of people and doing what teenagers do, right? Which is sort of doing the bigger thing with lots of people and partying. And I think if you're introverted, which I believe you are a bit like myself as well, there's a pain that's associated with that. And I just wanted to
Yeah.
explore that because Gabor Mate, the brilliant author and I guess one of the biggest thought leaders in the space of addiction, his wonderful book In the Realm of the Hungry Ghosts, has this lovely saying, it's not the problem, it's not why the problem, it's why the pain. And I know you've
Yeah.
taken full ownership of that, but I would almost argue that there was a pain there. There was that psychological pain of feeling awkward, and therefore you behaving perfectly naturally as a human being. If there's something that can soothe away that pain, why wouldn't you do it? Especially this thing that's prized and celebrated.
Yeah, that's right.
Such as
Exactly.
alcohol.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that what the headspace I was in when I wrote that book, and I wanted it to be how it turned out, because I wanted to document that first year of sobriety, because I think a lot of the books that I'd read, a lot of the quit lit stuff, it's sort of from people that are 10, 15, 20, 30 years sober, that looking back on their time and doing it more of a how-to. And I felt like that what was working, for people that were reading my posts and stuff on the sober group on OneYearNoBeer, was the fact that it was kind of this like a massive emotional roller coaster that first year. It's so many ups and downs, so many peaks and troughs, and so many of those ideas from that book are, just how I was feeling at the time. And so many times I sort of had to that particular excerpt that you mentioned was a really like tough one for me, because I've read a lot of other people's stories, and they've got a lot of a lot harder lives than I've had, and and I felt a bit guilty, that I'd sort of was feeling as bad as I was when there was no kind of tangible pain and trauma. But like as you said, as you go further along this and you sort of get more at peace with what you've done and everything, you start realizing, no, there was actually. It's your life, it's your experience, it's your story to tell, and you can tell it however you like. And for me, I was much more addicted to alcohol than I thought I was. And when I signed up to OneYearNoBeer, I didn't realize how much of a problem it was. And then as I started to really unpack my own behavior, I realized that, the levels of drugs and alcohol I was consuming were not, something that everyone does. And that had its own pain and trauma associated with it. I mean, I'd wake up every Monday, every Tuesday, whenever I'd get home, and just like seriously ask myself why I did that. For 20 years I did that, and it's just like,
what are we doing?
It never sat well with me. Exactly.
But we having read your book and loved it, it was literally. I think I'm really sensitive to this stuff, right? I trained to be a physio at one point in the sporting world when I was playing professional football, and I just couldn't do it because I couldn't physically look at anyone in pain or that had hurt themselves, because I would feel that pain in my body. This is like the mirror neurons that science has since discovered, that we literally can look at other people and our brains fire as if we're performing that act. And reading your book, genuinely, it was so well written, I could feel the pain in my body, like when it was going wrong, and it was like, I was like, oh no, literally in my bones, I was with you going, oh, don't do it. Oh, the pain.
Don't do it.
The pain of it. And I think that's what makes it such a great experience and a great read. And the greatest honor I can give a book is that it's battered already. It's dog-eared. It's got scribbles all over it. It's a book. That's the thing about books. You need to read them and get stuck into them. If they're pristine, it means someone hasn't read it. But before we sort of go on the adventure of sobriety, maybe just talk to us a bit more about your teenage years unfolding into your degrees and later your discovery of music, and then how you fell into this wonderful band.
Yeah, sure. So I had some pretty intense sort of drug and alcohol experiences quite early. So I had that. I've talked about it all in the book, but when I was 13, I drank like half a bottle of whiskey, vomited everywhere, did that usual rite of passage thing where you don't realize how strong the drug is, and you ingest it like it's water, and live to regret it. I then sort of dabbled in psychedelics and stuff from really early on as well, like sort of 14, and started taking ecstasy around 15 as well, but managed to kind of work my way through school, and then in my final couple of years of school, I sort of threw myself into sport and schoolwork, and sort of put my head down and ended up getting quite good marks. But once I went to university, just the lid came off, of all the benders and on the weekends and party time. Yeah, as I'm sure it has for, pretty much everyone. But there was quite a lot of drugs floating around at the time. And we were just always able to get our hands on stupid amounts of ecstasy and MDMA and speed and stuff. And that just became a feature of every weekend. We'd just go out and party, not sleep, drink all weekend. And then as the come downs and the anxiety started to spiral, I started to drink more during the weeks and use it as a bit of a crutch to get over what I'd done on the weekends, which sounds completely ridiculous now looking back at it. But, when you're in it.
That's the life, isn't it? That a lot of people are leading. And the truth behind this is that you were still doing well in your academics, and this eventually, I guess, led to PhD. I mean, in and amongst when you read it on the page, it just sounds like chaos, but here you are still showing up and doing those things.
It was chaos, but underneath that, I guess I kind of, I had this kind of attitude of I'm getting by. So look at me, how smart am I? I'm able to do this stuff, rather than stepping back, a bit further and questioning whether I could lead a richer life, with more ease and more leisure and more stronger relationships and all these kinds of things. Sort of had this kind of, churn and burn idea of life, and just go as hard as you can on all fronts and, excel. And I think a lot of it, I was thinking about this today, actually. I think a lot of the things that drove me to do the PhD, to excel at music, to, try and kill myself in the gym every other day, was this kind of idea that if I went hard enough at those things, I could run away from the damage I'd done on the weekends. I could somehow, negate it. Offset it. Yeah,
I think we see that a lot, don't we? That I was certainly there, being a professional footballer or being a professional athlete, and we would go hard at it, and I was like, I'll run it off, I'll sweat it out. It was that sort of approach to life.
Exactly.
I think a lot of people fall into that trap, and the truth is that at some point it often comes back and bites you on the bum at a later date, unfortunately.
Absolutely. And the anxiety I was experiencing as well, it's sort of, it was really off the chart, and I just thought it was normal, I just thought it was kind of normal stress. But a lot of those amphetamines, they just really exacerbate so much of the already existing social anxiety. So when you actually have them, that's great. It turns it all off. You just go, wow, this is great. I feel happy and at ease and everything. But then the rest of the working week, following that, you're an absolute cripple with it. So it's a funny one because
It's interesting because, again, I think when we look back at our teenage years and our early 20s, we don't have all of this wonderful knowledge that we have now as adults about psychology and how we work. And I think we make these associations, these neural associations. Like I said, mine at 13 was this elixir that was cans of supertenants that could allow me to talk to girls. It worked. I can't ever say it didn't work. It worked brilliantly for me. All that social anxiety, that low grade, I'm uncomfortable, I'm introverted, I'm awkward little ginger kid, suddenly vanished. That is powerful, so there was a real powerful neural connection made there. And the same for you, like you say, you've got that anxiety. You can do this thing that appears to remove it, but secretly it's making it twice as bad the next day. And then we fall into this sort of these maladaptive, I guess, coping strategies to get through life, and then we just carry them with us, for our teenage years, for our 20s, into our 30s. And very often that's, like in your story, you realize one day, oh, this is actually not serving me anymore.
Yeah, exactly right. And I guess like you said, is you carry it with you, and you don't realize how much you are actually self-medicating. And I can remember walking into a bar, feeling uncomfortable, feeling out of sorts, and just heading to the bar and getting couple of shots, drinking as quickly and as fast as I could just to suppress that. And I didn't realize how much it had kind of, it was starting to really dictate my behavior and determine, the sort of things I put myself up for, the sort of jobs I applied for, the sort of work I wanted to do, the sort of study I did. So much of my life was being dictated by those feelings of awkwardness and stuff. And yeah, it got incredibly bad for a while there. But I sort of found music, and that was really good. That helped me a lot with that. And in a funny kind of way, music sort of pulled me back from the edge, I think. Sort of moved houses, got out of the party scene, and I was sort of like, no, I'm really dedicated to playing drums, and I'll drive, and I won't party as much and all that kind of stuff. But without addressing what was driving the partying in the first place,
underneath,
it just fell back into it. Yeah.
And I'd compare that in many ways that I had sport, and on the sporting field, I didn't have any anxiety. I felt totally comfortable, at one, in my element. And I think that's probably the same with you for music. But outside of that arena, then the anxiety was there. And I guess being involved in music in a band puts you in this strange situation where when you're in the music, you're in your element, but equally it's championed, and it's sort of almost part of being a so-called rock star is to drink a lot and do a lot of drugs. It sort of comes with the territory.
I mean, when you're starting out, like, I don't know what it's like in the UK, but in Australia, you get paid in beer. I mean, like, you get like, actually, like, your time gets recompensed with alcohol. So like, what chance do you have? And obviously, like, the more success you get at it and stuff, the less that is the case. But still, there's this kind of assumption that
association with alcohol. And just even on that, I'm thinking about like the creative process, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this. And again, the arts, poetry, music is infused with psychedelics and just sort of people pushing things to the limit to create these amazing things. But then when I look at that, and I look at it from, my objective view, I just think that's just not true. I know there are these exceptions that some people seem to have created some, work of art in amongst, the noise and the chaos and maybe the sort of liberating mind space of drinking drugs. But what about all the millions and millions of amazing bands that never ever produce any music, or art that's never painted, or poetry that's never written, because people are too hungover and tired and uncreative that it doesn't surface? I know what your view is on alcohol and creativity as someone that's been in that space.
I can answer that with an anecdote. I was out one night with a friend of mine, and we were pissed out of our brains. We had psychedelics, cocaine, ecstasy, a bunch of stuff, and we went to our little makeshift studio and tried to write some music and have a jam and stuff. And we recorded heaps of this stuff that we thought was, good ideas at the time. We went back in the cold light of day and deleted the entire thing. So for me personally, I found that I've found much more creativity since sobriety, actually. And, I just feel like I've got more time for it, more mental space for it. In fact, creativity isn't sparked at all by drugs and alcohol. I think quite the opposite. I think it squashes it, actually. And my fellow musicians or other people that I know in the kind of arts world that are really amazingly creative, they do, even if they're drinking or taking drugs or whatever, they don't do that, and then they'll create their art in sobriety, and then they'll party on the weekend or whatever, and they keep them very separate. So I think I think it's a complete misnomer that you need drugs to be creative. I think it's complete nonsense.
I think that's an important message, because again, like all these, we create these false associations, don't we, in society, and just assume that the only way to be really creative is to somehow. I think Annie Grace talks about this. She was in PR and marketing, and it was a little bit like they'd have their group meetings to get creative, and it would be stocked full of booze, as if the only way we can possibly make all these amazing connections is to do it while laced with alcohol. And like, as you said, you just replayed that story there, the creative people that are getting creative outside of the drink and the drugs. That's almost the reward for them, in a strange way, for going through the creative process. And I think that's a really important message to get out there, so that we don't have as many people, teenagers, youngsters, falling into that same trap of assuming to be like them, I have to behave in this way. And actually, that's not the truth of it. I think it was was it Bruce Springsteen or one of the real big old rock stars said, like, the key to being a rock star is to give off this impression that you are this like sort of crazy out there on the edge guy, while secretly coming home and writing and working really hard at all
Yeah,
your lyrics and
exactly.
your
That's right.
songs.
Yeah. And it's that thing of working hard. I think, like, I don't know any really successful musicians that don't just, they slave for their art, and they're
Yeah.
not. It's not this kind of hedonistic party lifestyle, and in fact, it's more like the kind of B grade to Z grade musicians like I was, that just party their asses off, and use it as an excuse to just fuel their party, which is where it ended up for me, unfortunately. But that's
Yeah,
in
and
the
you
book.
describe it so well in the book. It is in the book, and it's really detailed and graphic. And again, as I said earlier, you could almost feel the momentum of, oh no, not again. I know where this is going to end up. But living that lifestyle, and again, just to give you some sort of credit, it's a tough environment, right? Because it comes with the territory. You got paid in beer, and it's part of being young and in a rock band, and all these sort of false associations. And like you just pointed out there, so true. The really elite people at anything, in my opinion, they're not getting smashed up. And it's a bit like in the world of football. For years, there's been this association from the fans on the terrace. I'm sure it is like in Aussie Rules as well, that all of their heroes on the pitch are still going out on a Saturday night and absolutely, getting on it Saturday and Sunday. They're not anymore. They're athletes. Yet the fans haven't made that association. They're still in their mind assuming they're all going out and partying when they're not. Not at the top level. No one is anymore. I don't care what sport it is that they've reined that in.
No, I agree, and I think it's the same in music. To be honest, I think that the more professional, the bigger the stakes are, the more people are just I mean, I'm sure there are exceptions to that, and music's a rare one because it's not like in sport where you actually have to be peak physical fitness, and a lot of people I don't know what it's like being at the very top of music, but I certainly know that my experience, it was very saturated, and it was really hard to not drink, and even when I tried not to, I'd end up drinking just because it was so just everywhere. Like, it's everywhere. You get paid in beer, you get free beers, you get people are there to see you, there to have a good time. And when we finally went touring and stuff, like, you're playing a show every night, but those people are just there to see you once. That you're from Australia, there's novelty factor, and that might be their one night out for the week or for the month or whatever, but you're up smashing it every night. So it's like,
do you know what? And there's many similarities between that and Broken, the environment that I was in for years, because we'd take out, say we'd have 50 clients. So every time you saw that one client, that might be their one night out for the month. So they've cleared it, with their partner. They're like, game time. Come on, we're going to have a really big one. But that might be your third night out that week. But they're expecting you to show up in a big way because they're all excited about it. And you're like, oh, I don't really want to do this anymore. And they're like, come on, let's go. And almost like a rock star, there's that persona of, hold on, you're a rock star. Come on. You can't tell me you're not going to have a drink tonight. How does that work? And in the same sort of way, it was a bit like, you're a broker, you entertain us, you take us out. How can you not possibly not drink, right? So this builds this pressure that keeps us, I think, locked in something for way longer than we would normally, I think, in truth.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that sort of like permeates across society as well. I think that we all feel that way as well. And you only need to sort of scan the OneYearNoBeer Facebook group occasionally, and you just realize how much pressure every single person is under to socialize with alcohol. Like, family, friends, partners, all this sort of stuff. Oh, you got to have a drink. It's this special night. It's someone's birthday. It's your birthday. It's all these things, all these occasions, and it sort of builds up into your mind. And then it's not until you sort of commit to that first year off where you have to do all those things for the first time sober, that you realize, wow, that's actually doable. You can do all those things that I thought I could never do without booze. You can, and it's actually quite fun. So
and we'll get back to that in a second. And just to speak to that, because I think it's so true. I think what happens when we felt that original pain, that anxiety that we spoke about in our sort of early teens, we found this elixir, this thing that soothed away that pain. And then what we really do for the next 20 odd 30 years is rob ourselves of the opportunity to learn really healthy ways to deal with that, so we almost have to retrain ourselves when we do take a break to socialize again, and you talk about this in the book, actually, almost getting comfortable feeling uncomfortable, making peace with the fact that every now and again you're going to feel a bit anxious and a bit uncomfortable, but instead of just rushing to alcohol, it's like, I'm just going to sit with this for a while. I'm just going to breathe through this and letting it pass. And I think is a really powerful message that comes through the book. And just before we get like any deeper into that, let's just go back to this point where you were like, right, something has to change. You've obviously been through all these teenage years, the partying, the band, all the sort of successes and failures that come with that. And then you're at this moment, you're like, nah, do you know what? Something's got to change. Talk us through that.
Okay. So I kind of got through once the band started touring. That was when I really felt like the drinking in particular escalated to a point where I couldn't really control it anymore. A couple of 2-month sort of stints on the road inside sort of 7 or 8 months, and I was just drinking so much, like every night, to the point where I was either sick, passing out, and I just couldn't cope with the pressures that we were all under. Things were disintegrating a little bit, and it was getting difficult personally, and leaving my wife and kid at home, and I was feeling pretty bad about that. So I just buried it under as much booze as I could. And then I got home and I thought, the band's kind of, almost pretty much disintegrated. We're not really doing anything. So I'll settle back into normal life, go get a job, go get a 9-to-5er, and, I'll be fine. But after you've stretched your tolerance of alcohol out to the level that I had, I just couldn't normalize. I couldn't sort of come back and go, okay, I can just have 2 beers after dinner. I was starting to drink heavily at home, starting to have wine at sort of, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 2 o'clock, whatever, And I just thought, like, this is starting to get a bit, really, really bad example for my child. And I just felt like I was becoming, just normalizing a really high level of alcohol consumption. And then the benders started to creep back in on the weekends as well. So not only was I, sort of drinking 2+ bottles of wine a night, I was also going out on the weekends and sort of, finding drugs again, and, drinking for, 36, 48 hours straight, and just, feeling pretty miserable. And because I had that experience of touring where I drunk so heavily, I was able to do that, and it was becoming easier.
As it were. Yeah.
Exactly. And I started to get like, I didn't realize all this stuff about addiction and about the physical withdrawal. I just kept drinking. And so I went out one night when I sort of said to my wife that I'd, be home by 11. I was playing a gig at a local venue, and I just started drinking, and I was like, that's just, I've just basically lied again and lied to my wife about what I'm doing. And I ended up staying out till like 10 in the morning or something, and did a bunch of coke and drinking gin at a stranger's house. It's just like, it's all this same behavior again. And I woke up that morning and just thought, I really need to try something. This is getting it just got to the point where I was like, I can't actually trust my own word. I say things and I don't know if I'm going to actually do that, or whether I'm just going to whether it's just going to turn out to be completely a lie. And wasn't feeling good about myself.
You say that, because I think there is that trust thing, isn't there? You lose trust in yourself. I think that's a really that's a sad moment. That's a tough moment when you're just like, do you know what? I don't believe a word I'm saying anymore. I think that's a really like deflating moment. And luckily, I think you picked that up and you managed to turn that around. And I think one of the great things we do when we go alcohol free, we build trust in ourselves again. That's a really beautiful thing, when you trust the things that you say.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize how bad it had gotten, but like it really got to the point where I couldn't trust a word I said, and my wife couldn't trust me either. And it's sort of like, and they don't look like massive things, like I'm going to come home at 11 and you come home late, but it's like you do that just over a lifetime, every weekend or every opportunity, and it starts becoming a huge thing. And those small things just add up. And I felt very much that I didn't believe a word I said, and I felt terrible about it. I started to really, and that voice inside it wasn't a compassionate voice. It was the
Yeah.
ultra critical, like, you're a piece of shit, you're all these, horrible things. Then the negative self-talk was horrible. And I was sick of it, really sick of it. It was a
Yeah.
real rock bottom kind of moment, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. And then how did you
Mm.
sort of turn that around? What were the things that started to happen?
Well, for one, I sort of looked into AA,
Yeah.
and I found AA a little bit like, I wasn't really ready to hear what AA sort of said, that, you
Yeah.
have to sort of face that you're an alcoholic and you can't ever drink again and all those kinds of stuff that I think is probably accurate now looking back at it. But at the time, I just felt like it was I just
Yeah.
kind of got into a reverse, and yeah. And then I was, a friend of mine actually mentioned you guys, One Year No Beer, and I had a look, and I just thought,
Yay.
well, this looks great. I can
Love it.
saw one of your videos about, challenging people to, have a year off and see how it feels, and I thought, well, I can do that. Can I? I don't know. So
Yeah, exactly.
I,
It's brave.
I signed up. I signed up for the 28-day challenge because I thought baby steps.
Yeah.
Got through that. Not really very well. I sort of, had a stumble after 3 days, 5 days, 10 days, did that kind of, blip, reset, had a bender, couldn't quite get the momentum going. And then it sort of stuck for about 10 weeks. I think it was 70 days. And then,
Yeah.
I had one beer, which turned into about 50 beers and a pile of ketamine, cocaine, ecstasy, acid, mushrooms, like the works.
What was
And I
that on your
woke up.
daughter's birthday? Was that on
No,
your
that was at a
was that
music
another time?
festival. That
Right,
was
yeah.
another time, yeah. And I woke up from that bender, and I just felt, after 10 weeks of no alcohol, I had
Yeah.
actually started to feel a bit healthier and, feel my body starting to recover. And that bender after that was the worst I've ever felt. Like, having experienced a body that was sort of getting clean,
Yeah.
and then to pile in the drugs and booze like I did, it absolutely destroyed me. And I just woke up that morning and said, I'm doing a year. I signed up for a year. That was my day one. And that's the last time I've drunk. So that was
Wow.
two
And I
and
think
2 years and 5 months ago. So
God, the two. I've got my maracas here. I might have to whip them out any second, but I'll keep them on the table. But what's important to hear, and we'll sort of dive into it now, is that it wasn't this perfect linear thing. It wasn't like, da-da, hey, that's it, I'm never going to drink again. You had lots of false starts and stumbles, just like myself and just like most people that I know. But the learning was in those failures and those upsets. And I remember you talking about, it was on your daughter's birthday, where you basically stayed sober for your daughter's birthday and you were thrilled with yourself, delighted with yourself. And it was the end of the day and everyone had gone home and you thought, oh, I know what I'll do. I might have a drink to celebrate the fact that I've been such a good boy all day.
I'll have a drink to celebrate my sobriety.
I know. I mean, we've all
Yeah.
been there. And I, when I was reflecting on that, and I could, again, feel your pain through it. And I think what happens to a lot of us, especially in the early days, we're running purely on willpower. And willpower is like a metaphorical muscle. It runs out. And I think when you're like using so much of it around some of those big moments or big occasions, like a birthday that's, associated with alcohol, and you're just draining it, by the end of the day, there's nothing left. So when that little voice pipes up, which is completely like nonsensical, and it says, why don't you have a drink to celebrate your whole day of sobriety, that you've got nothing left in the tank to fight that voice. It's like, good idea. Yeah. I'll have a beer. And then that, you wake up the next day and you feel like you're back to square one. So I could hear that in your story, but it's important that it wasn't that perfect, linear, I've made a decision and now here I am. And just maybe talk to, what were some of the lessons learned in that process or in those obstacles that you had to face?
Yeah, sure. I think that's a really good point, and something I, like to say, and for everyone, in One Year No Beer who's struggling a little bit, I cursed myself every Monday from when I was about 18, from 18 to 36 when it finally started to stick. I didn't really want to be doing it. I think, they're the years that you don't see that are like, you are actually learning quite a lot about addiction and about what you need to get sober from those early experiences. But when I actually joined One Year No Beer and tried to, get do the 28 days, I just found that I could get to, like such a familiar story. I could get Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday out of out of the way. But by Thursday, the willpower was gone. I was run out, and I started to physically crave alcohol. I started to just want to, shut up my brain. I just wanted to go back to the way things were. And so you start doubting yourself, and you start questioning the whole process. And that's all just the kind of negativity that addiction thrives on. And you sort of buckle. But then I was trying really hard to not let that kind of derail me. I did reset every time I did that. So I went back to day one. I didn't sort of continue because I just wanted to, being the kind of obsessive that I am, I wanted a full year with no alcohol at all. I wanted 1 year of no beer completely. And that's just me. I think everyone, do it your way. But that exactly. And each time I had those little stumbles, I just tried to think about I went back to your videos, I went back to the emails and thought, like, what made me do that? What was I really looking for when I had that drink?
Brilliant.
Could I have called someone? Could I have messaged someone? What could I have done differently to not have the drink in the first place? And then I started to think about the reality of what I was facing. I realized I only had to say no to the first drink. It was all, the chaos happens after drink one. If I could just say no to one drink and ride out that 20 minutes where I really wanted that drink, then I would probably save myself all the drama, all the chaos. And that's when things started to shift. That's when I started to do other things. Like when I really craved alcohol, I'd call someone, I'd message someone, I'd just post on the group, I'd do something to break how I was feeling and just try and ride out that craving. And then I found, after an hour or so, I'd ridden it out. It wasn't so scary. I did it. And you just have to keep, saying no to that first drink. And then all of a sudden you find yourself, the days pile up.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's so poignant, exactly that. And I talk about this a lot. Really, it's not about focusing on 24 hours and you're completely smothered by this thing. It literally is that first drink. So if you actually do a lot of focus and a lot of work around avoiding that first drink when those trigger moments come, whether they're, at 6 p.m. or after work or whatever it is, if you put all your effort into those moments, like you said, 30 minutes later, it's gone, it's passed. Yeah, that's where you get that longer streak. And just talking about the first drink brings me to another topic that I wanted to explore with you. What's your view on moderation? Because I think that what's difficult about that is that the first drink lives in moderation, doesn't it? So I think it can open us up. Or lots of people. I think it's difficult.
This is where I sort of started to warm to AA's message a little bit more as I got further into it. I feel like the kind of person I am, I'm quite obsessive. I'm quite extreme. I'm all or nothing. I felt like if I just take it off the table completely, at least for a year, then I can give myself a chance to really, see what life's like. And I remember your podcast with Rich Roll, and where you were sort of saying that, just try it, like try this, way of living for a year, challenge yourself. And I thought, well, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to have no beer for 1 year and see how I feel. And I got to the end of the year and I just thought, well, I've come this far, like why go back? So for me, I don't feel like I'm a moderate person in any aspect of my life. So what makes me think I could be moderate with alcohol? I can't be moderate with chocolate. I can't be moderate with study. I can't be moderate with music. It's not how I am. So moderation with alcohol doesn't seem like it's going to be a feasible thing. So
yeah, and I think it's getting to know thyself, and I think that's what these experiences do to us in life. Our hardest moments reveal our true self. We really get to know who we are and what we're all about, and that learning can be incredibly powerful. Like you just described, that you're an all-in type of person, but if you can channel that in these healthy ways, such as writing a book, for example, or sport or fitness and your family, it's a really beautiful thing. But equally, you've got that self-awareness to know that you could just as easily pick that up and place it in a wrong area, and you're going to go all in on that. Therefore, why put yourself back in the lion's den all the time when ultimately you've demonstrated to yourself over the last couple of years now that you can live this vibrant, energized life without it? So why bring it back? That's my view. It's like, why would I do that? Why would I go back to tiredness and lethargy and can't be arseness and all the little white lies and all the rubbishness and the weight? And I'm not ever going to trade that in a billion years for the fact that I'm alcohol free. So for me, it's a done deal. I don't even bother with moderating. It's just not on my radar. But I know everyone's different, but I thought it was just an
Yeah.
important topic to explore.
No, I'm definitely in the same boat as you on that, because I just don't. Yeah, I just feel like too much. It opens the door to too much chaos. And for me, there's a really strong association with drug taking and alcohol. Like, I have not had any issues with drugs at all since I quit booze. It's that, like, it lowers the inhibitions. It makes me, the minute I have 2 or 3 beers, I'm just like stinging to find drugs, and it's always going to be the same, I think. So for me, there's that layer that, like, by not having that 1 or 2 drinks, I'm just shutting the door on the drugs as well. And I think that's where I get really into trouble. So
Yeah, I
for me,
totally agree.
I'm the same. Just keep out, shut the door. It's shut. Keep
Yeah,
it
and
shut.
I think, we don't talk about that enough, but alcohol is the gateway to the bad stuff, isn't it? Let's be honest. It's the
It is.
huge door opener to all the other chaos. But equally, I always like to say, going alcohol free is the gateway to all the good stuff. It's that little change in your life. Suddenly, the thing that's created all of this upset and chaos in your life, if you just turn it off, is the very same thing that opened you up all to this, like, beauty and vibrancy and energy and that smile, and it all comes back just turning the dial on that one thing. And you're right. So for me, it's like, why would I bother going and start messing with that again? Like, I just shut it
Yeah,
out and
that's right.
lead this lovely life on the back of it. So you start to get some momentum around your sobriety, as you refer to
Yep.
it. What were some of the wins that you noticed? And you talk about lots of little small wins in the book. Maybe just talk about a couple of them. It's nice to hear.
Yeah, so that it was really small wins. I sort of
Yeah.
felt, I mean, obviously there are some physical, changes that I noticed really early. I just had a lot more energy. I was not, sort of skipping workouts. I was able to kind of do more healthy activities much more consistently. And as you know, like, once you start building a consistent routine, you start to, prioritize that over, the prospect of drinking, but then missing my gym session at 5 a.m. or whatever I was doing. That
Yeah.
started to become like a really bad deal. So I started to get this positive reinforcement that I was, putting in really great things that was enriching my life, instead of, alcohol and staying out late and stuff. So they were the little wins in terms of my physical well-being. In terms of, like, gigs and stuff like that, because I was still working as a musician at the time,
Yeah.
so I'm still in the environment. So, like, trying to, when I was sort of like 40 days sober and I'm out playing shows in Melbourne and stuff, and everyone's drinking, and it's just like so many triggers coming at
Yeah.
you. But the little wins really came about through relying on other people a bit more, like,
Yeah.
rather than sort of, pretending I had all the answers and feeling like, like being really strong and, macho and stuff. I just put myself out there and just asked for help as much as possible, and, said what was on my mind, that I was struggling, that I was, feeling, in a weak moment and felt like I wanted to drink. And the amount of support and, just comments and messages and stuff from people in the group was so good. And that really helped me to just, put away those ideas of drinking at that moment. And that's all you need to do. Just keep doing it
Yeah.
in that moment. And I tried not to think too far ahead, and tried not to sort of worry about whether this is going to be, for me for the rest of my life, and just get over that, that hour when I had to. And that was really, that really did start to shift my whole mindset around it. And the other thing that I started to do along with those wins was I started to really try and interrogate what I actually liked about alcohol. I'd sort of write, down pros, cons, those kinds of things. What's it giving me? What am
Yeah.
I missing? What am I actually missing out on? And that helped, I think, to sort of rewire my brain. I started to negatively associate with booze rather than romanticize it. But then obviously, you get hit by weak spots where you start romanticizing it. And, like, to be honest, that still happens occasionally, even now. So, that's a long-term sort of prospect, I think.
Yeah, but a couple of really important things there, and you just nailed it. It's that rewiring. What we spoke about at 13, when we have those neural connections, you've literally got to go in and actually rewire those neural connections that stay with you for all those years, and switch them to the positives of being alcohol free, and then switch on the negatives to alcohol, which you know and you've experienced, but equally there are always those moments. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm, what am I, 7 years into this now, and that sort of stuff disappeared after year 3 or 4, but it was there. You know, when the rose tinted beer goggles suddenly slip over and the
Yeah,
sun's shining and you
that's right.
reminisce, and the way the brain works, we don't store like movie clips in our mind. We store just little segments of memories,
Mm,
and because of a human nature, right, we have to stay relatively positive, otherwise what's the point? So the way that we store memories, we often select the positive snapshots. So when we reminisce, guess what we notice? We notice the sun shining and being free and young and sitting
yeah,
outside with our best mates, drinking, and the crack and the banter. We remember all of that, but we completely forget and negate, you know, the sickness, the arguments, the
hmm
couldn't be arsedness that follows, the destruction, the upset. We forget about all of that and we just romanticize about those perfect moments. So what I always encourage people to do is to play the tape forward. You know, what would
exactly.
happen after those
Yeah,
free drinks, right? And most of us know where it ends up, and it's not pretty, and it's not
that's
sunshines, and it's not rainbows.
it's exactly right. And that your idea of, you know, playing the tape forward is something that I lived by. Like that became. I remember seeing that on one of the videos and one of the emails, and I was like, that is so what I have to do now. Like that's the
Yeah.
only way to get through this. Like, yeah, one beer looks great, and I'm at the bar, and that looks all, you know, sunshine and lollipops. But what does it actually mean? It means one drink. It means another drink. It means another drink. It means I start jonesing for drugs. It means I get on the hunt for drugs. It means I'm out all night. It means the next 3, 4, 5 days are a complete write-off. It starts to not add up. The scales tip, and yeah, so that it was such a great tip, and something that I've passed on to everyone that'll listen, pretty much, about playing the tape forward, and, you
Oh,
know,
I love it.
actually visualizing where the night ends up
Yeah.
if you give up now. So yeah,
And that's the truth. And when you connect with that, it's like, oh yeah, actually, yeah, you're right. That doesn't sound quite as attractive as it did. But again, we're these perfectly imperfect humans. We're easily sucked back in. But it's so good to see your story unfolding. You know, I'm so proud that you've come this far, and now you're ready to share this story. So, let's just talk about the book briefly. When were you sort of called? And I like the word called because it is this hero's journey. When did you start getting an inkling? Do you know what? I might actually want to share some of my journey to help other people.
um, it's interesting. So I did creative writing at uni for a couple of
Mm.
semesters, and I really enjoyed it. And it was something I really loved doing. And but as I partied more, I found I had less to talk about. Like I sort of, you know, had the usual early 20s, you know, angsty bullshit of, you know, unrequited love or whatever that, you know,
Yeah.
is fun for a moment. And then I was finding that, like, the drunker I got, the higher I got, the more I'd come home and just ramble, and I got really sick of it. So I sort of threw out all my books and, you know, um, decided to put, you know, writing to the side and, you know, focus on more English criticism and stuff. So I knew that writing was in there somewhere. And then when I saw the OneYearNoBeer, like the Facebook group, and I saw people posting and stuff, I thought, well, this is a good chance to kind of, you know,
Mm.
just put it out there. And I thought, the only way I'm going to get myself out of this is just like pure, like unbridled honesty, because a lot of dishonesty had got me into a lot of trouble. And I just
Yeah.
thought there's no way out of this other than just being honest. And in a way, you know, posting to a group anonymously, to people you don't know, is kind of weirdly liberating. And so I started posting, and a lot of the excerpts from the book were actually posts on the group. So it started really early on. So I think it was about day 10 that I did my first post and stopped lurking and wrote something down. And I just thought I'm just going to keep doing that until people tell me to shut up. And yeah.
Yeah, and I was a part of that in the sense of seeing those posts unfold, and it was really exciting. And bearing in mind, you know, there's been many tens, hundreds of thousands of people come through OneYearNoBeer. So I'm, you know, I'm incredibly proud of. And there's many stories that I noticed, and yours being one of them, because of the way that you wrote. And it wasn't just a post; it was like this sort of prose and this verse and this art. And it's lovely in the book that there's many of those posts, as you said, that sort of, you know, signpost the book, as it were, as you progress through your days and the experience. And I think that's what's nice about the book as well. Like you said, it's not you looking back 15 years after being sober and going, this is what happened. It's like in the moment. Like I said, that's why I think it's so sort of powerful. You can feel it in your bones because it's really real and visceral. But to see you coming through that
Yeah.
and to share it back now is so powerful. So whereabouts on that journey did you think, oh, actually, do you know what? I might sort of put this together in some sort of a format and give it back to people?
Yeah, well, I actually got I had no designs on that at all. I mean, I thought I really was enjoying. It was really helping me more than anything else. It was sort of acting like a, because every time I posted something and it was something I was really ashamed of quite often, some episode or something that I did where I was like, oh my God, I'm really ashamed of this. But I was trying to sort of own past behavior and do it like just talk therapy, I guess, with, the internet. And I started to realize that quite a lot of people had very similar stories. And when I'd post stuff, like the amount of people that said that, yeah, I've had that exact same experience, or I've done exactly the same thing, I was like, wow, this is great. This is like, I'm not alone in this at all. It started to make me realize there was a whole network of people out there that had so many similar stories to me. And I thought, wow, we've really, talked ourselves into a like stigma here. Like we're so ashamed of behaviors and so incapable of talking about them publicly. I thought, well, I'm just going to keep doing that while it's, serving me and while people are getting something out of it. And then I think at about maybe 5 or 6 months, I got approached by someone who said, look, I've been reading your posts on OneYearNoBeer and I'd like you to like do a proposal of a book, and I'm going to submit it to a friend of mine who's a publisher. And I did that, and they loved it and said, yeah, let's do this. So I compiled all the posts I ever did on OneYearNoBeer up to about the 5-month period, and just thought I need to write a narrative around that and see where I end up. And I spent the next kind of 6 months doing that. And then obviously the book, sort of takes over from the post. But I thought there were a few key ones that I wanted to keep in there. So
yeah, and it's really beautiful. And again, on the hero's journey, if you look at the work of Joseph Campbell, there's always that sort of wise guide that appears. And in this example, you just shared that someone within the group had seen what you were writing and from out the blue, presented themselves and says, what about we bundle this up and potentially put it forward as a book? And I think that's really important, that you have the courage to be out there and owning it and sharing it. And through that courage sparks these sort of opportunities and these people that appear as if by magic that have now guided you towards a place where you've got a real book. I'm going to hold it up.
yeah.
It's a real book. The wrong way around. It's a real book.
There we go.
I mean, I know you're someone that loves books, right? And you actually mentioned that in the book itself. And what did it feel like now to get a real book, like something that you can hold in your hands? How did that feel for you?
It's so surreal, to be honest. It's something I always wanted to do. And, obviously when I was studying at uni, it was like, that's really what I want to do. And it's funny how, like what you were saying, about switching off the alcohol and then all these opportunities kind of arise. It's just something I never would have done without that. I would have had too many self-doubts, too many self-criticisms, trying too hard to reinvent the wheel. And what sobriety, gave me was all this raw emotional material that I could tap into. And I found that the more I wrote about it and the more I wrote just in general, the more I enjoyed it, the better off I felt. And I started to feel like I got into a bit of a rhythm with it, and I started to write every day. And, that's how you write a book, is you just write. And, that's what I missed in uni. I wasn't just writing. I was writing sporadically. I was writing in comatose states and all this kind of stuff. And I started to apply some of the discipline that I'd applied to my music and to my academic studies and stuff to the writing, and just got up every day and wrote. And all of a sudden you have this book, and then you knock it into shape, and then some people publish it, and you're like, it's all very surreal.
Talking about
Here we are.
But how did you feel? And this is an important question, because obviously the OneYearNoBeer environment is a really safe, protective environment. People understand you, they get you. Many of them would have seen your journey unfold, and your posts are visceral and they're real and they're candid. How did you feel about picking that up and putting it into a book form that anyone, can read it, friends, family, maybe people you'd never shared any of this stuff, which is really raw with? How did that feel for you?
I'm shitting myself, to be honest, mate. Like,
Yeah.
it's pretty, it's all out there.
It is.
Um, but I gave it to my wife first. She got the first read. I
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that she was okay with whatever I said. Then gave it to my sister to read. She's sort of second closest person I have, and made sure that she was okay with it. And then I gave my parents a right of reply as well. Gave it to them to read, and that kind of was the scariest in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
because like your close family and the people that you care about the most, reading it sort of the scariest. But now it's that thing of like, now it's not mine. It's public domain now. It's for everyone else, and I've sort of made peace with the material in the book, and with
Yeah.
it, with me owning my story. And I felt like it's also something I had to do. Like, it was great to have that safety net of 1YearNoBeer, but I think that it's really important that it goes out into the public, and I'm fully open about it and fully able to talk publicly about that story.
Yeah, and I love that. Once you own the story like that, it's done, right? And then you've got total
Yeah,
confidence and you're totally comfortable. You're not tripping over your words. It's like it's all there, right? It's in the book. I can't. There's no running away from it. You've been completely open and honest, and that I think adds power to your message and to your story. And I think this is just the very start of your adventure to give back, to other people, I think, which is going to be really, really powerful and going to help lots of people. And just almost as we wrap up, what's your dream for the book? If you had a hope or a dream for the book, what would it be?
um, I have been thinking about that quite a lot, actually, because you sort of wonder why you do this stuff.
Yeah,
Like, it's not enough to just like write it because someone said, "Oh, you should write it." It was more than that, and I think that for me, what I really hoped when I set out writing it was just that if I could help someone who was in my situation, 2.5 years ago, when I was really at the bottom of the barrel and feeling terrible, if I could just help them get
mm,
over those early stages and get through that first year and get back a hold of their life and feeling good about themselves, and if I could play even just the smallest role in that, then that's what I hoped for the book. Because authors did that for me. Annie
mm,
Grace's book did it for me. Catherine Gray's book
mm.
helped me enormously. So I just really wanted to try and give back to the people that are struggling, because I care deeply about their future sobriety, and it's something that I'm really quite passionate about. And I hope that it helps people just get through that really tough first year.
Yeah, and it's a really beautiful thing that you've said there and done, because I think it's exactly that. You having the courage, and it takes a ton of courage, by the way, to be as open and honest and share your story. If that helps that one person, and you're going to get so many messages from this, and people will reach out to you and say, Drew, your words impacted me. I've connected with it. I've identified with it. I've made proactive change. It's saved my marriage, or it's saved my life, or my world so better. That in itself is one of the most powerful experiences you'll ever have. And I know that firsthand. That's why I do this. That's why I'll do it to the day that I die in the alcohol-free space. I want to champion everyone in the alcohol-free space, especially yourself, because it's a really beautiful thing, and it's a really necessary thing, and it's a really bespoke and unique individualistic thing. And we all connect with different people, different words, different books, different movements. And I think it's really powerful, and we need more people like you to have the courage to share this stuff, because I think it's a really beautiful thing. And if you help one person who helps another person, and collectively we move the needle a little bit, we might
Yeah,
transform the world's relationship with alcohol. That's the dream, right?
that's right. And that's something that that's something like when I was doing, work in academia and stuff. And I always thought, I wanted to, try and have some kind of positive impact on the world. But I was always thinking systems, and always thinking at that system level, thinking about big concepts, thinking about, philosophical ideas that you could sort of change on a system level. And then I sort of realized in writing this incredibly personal book that that's not actually my natural game, is big systemic thinking. It's actually much more individual, personable, one-to-one. That's my natural habitat. And again, just another nuance of my personality that I just didn't realize was there until I switched off all the drugs and alcohol, and was able to see it a bit clearer. So that's why I've gone the intensely kind of personal memoir track with this book. And, I didn't want to sort of fill it with pages of research or stats or anything like that. And there's plenty of authors out there doing that. And, some people will resonate more with that. Exactly. But for those people that sort of are in that year and struggling and riding that roller coaster, I just wanted a book that sort of said, that's okay. We all go through this. It's really tough. It's a hard first year. And, here's all the,
the things here it is, and it's raw beauty, and it's raw beauty, all the failures and all the successes, and look at the beautiful outcome. We're having this lovely conversation. You look amazing. You look lovely and fresh and energized. Your beautiful family, all of these things are coming together. And just what's really interesting is that there was that call, I think, probably all along. There was maybe something tugging you to say that you wanted to give back somehow. And I think many of us hear that call. I certainly did for years. And it wasn't until after my relationship with alcohol and coming out the other side that this opportunity, without me really knowing, presented itself of, oh, here's a vehicle now for me to do some good in the world, to give back somehow. And I think that's exactly what's happened to you. And I think it is a really beautiful thing. And I'm really proud and honoured to be a small part of your story. And I know you're going to be a big part of many people's story to come. So
thanks, mate. That means a lot. Well, you're a bigger part than you're giving away there. It's not just a small part, a massive part, because OneYearNoBeer, the whole platform, the whole program, the whole thing you've created there is amazing. It's helping so many people. It's helping thousands of people. So it's a brilliant thing. So thank you for doing it.
Yeah, and equally, it's a great thing because of the people that are involved, and obviously your stories inside the community are what inspire people, and that's what I love about the alcohol-free movement, and the courage of people just inspires everyone else. Failures, successes, and then we realize, what, we're all perfectly imperfect. It's time to crack on, and it gives us a bit of space and time to figure it out, because like your story is a brilliant example of that. It's not this lovely linear perfect story. There's many bumps in the road, but here you are, with a story to tell, a gift to give. And on that note, so where can we get a hold of the book? Where can we get in touch with you? What's the next steps?
Sure. So the book is coming out officially in August. It's available for pre-order at Amazon. So it's
right now,
After Party.
Perfect.
And you can go to drewcharles.net, which is my website, and it's all the links are there as well. And it's also, I think it's available on Kindle like in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, the hard cover comes out in August, but the Kindle's out in May. So yeah.
Love it. Audiobook?
Audiobook's coming out at a later date. So yeah, I think that's going to be more like towards the end of the year around Christmas time. So yeah.
Fab. So yeah,
I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, well, that is a really difficult experience. Trust me, I've done it twice, and it was 2 or 3 of the most painful days of my life, trying to turn my Essex F's into ths into ths. Oh, I was all over the place by the end of it. But regardless, it's another great medium to get your message out to as many people as possible. So I hope the audiobook will follow. But as mentioned, I'll put all the links in the show notes and whatnot. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honor. I'm absolutely thrilled. This is the start.
Thanks,
this is the start of your adventure. We'll do this again very soon, just to find out how the book's going and the sort of feedback you're getting. But I thank you. You're a hero in my eyes. Anyone in the alcohol-free space that's trying to help other people is a total ledge, and you're certainly one of those. Thank you for joining me today, Drew. You're a star.
Thanks so much for having me, Andy, and that legend status right back at you, mate. So yeah, thank you so much.
Good man. All right, let's do it.